When it all went down, Laura didn't bother with the usual, "We need to talk." Maybe I should have picked up on the clues earlier, but like anyone content in their life, I overlooked the signs until they smacked me right in the face. Was I too naive? Possibly. My wife, Laura, is 47, and me, Jack, I'm hitting 49 next month. Our home's been quiet lately, especially since our son, Matt, left for college last fall, and our daughter, Sarah, enlisted in the Navy, which, frankly, didn't sit well with me. I'm a retired Army colonel trying to adapt to civilian life after nearly 3 decades in the military. Our family name is Davidson. The incident unfolded at a neighborhood gathering in the Goldsteins' backyard. Laura was pretending to tolerate Dave Marston's blabbering. Dave was likely trying to impress her with his biceps rather than his dull chatter. Laura rolled her eyes and subtly tugged at her earlobe, our secret signal for a rescue. Meanwhile, I was caught up talking to Jenna, a recently single mom who had shaped up impressively at the local gym after her husband took off, leaving her with their kids and his debts. Jenna was all about her new workout routine, and as she went on, I nodded along, shooting an occasional glance Laura's way. Catching my eye, she shot me a glare that screamed, "Get over here or forget about tonight." Taking Jenna's hand, I steered her towards Laura and the muscle-bound Dave. "Jenna, meet Dave," I interjected, giving Laura the chance to escape. "My hero," she muttered sarcastically, her smile tight. "Took you long enough. You do realize Jenna's enhancements aren't exactly natural? Considering how much we spent on yours, I thought you'd recognize the difference," I retorted. "Let's head home," she snapped. "I need to make an early flight tomorrow." Exiting through the gate, we passed a young couple, the Neals. Vincent Neal nodded, giving way, while his wife, Lily, offered a polite smile. We'd exchanged the usual pleasantries earlier, so we just moved on. But their glances felt odd, almost predatory, like Lily was sizing me up as her next target. Years in military intelligence had me always on edge, suspecting subtext in every look. Despite the frequent separations inherent to military life, a year in Korea nearly ended our marriage once I knew this time was different. Something or someone had changed the dynamic. This isn't uncommon. Military marriages often suffer under the strain of distance and temptation. I had learned of Laura's potential indiscretions indirectly. She had returned to her hometown during my last deployment, taking a job at the local hospital, conveniently across from a hotel managed by an old flame of mine. My old flame had seen Laura frequently at that hotel, enough to raise suspicions. No solid evidence, just enough to make me hire a PI when I got back. The investigation turned up little. The hospital's renovation meant parking was limited, so Laura had to park at the hotel like many others. But she was arriving for her shifts unusually early, a pattern that ceased upon my return. Coincidence? Maybe. But it was enough to make me question everything. We had our rough patches, sure. Military life isn't kind to marriages, the separations, the stress. We knew the divorce stats for military couples were high, but we thought we were the exception. Yet here I was, wondering if during my last deployment, my wife had decided she was done waiting. Our marriage had survived much, but the looming suspicion was a new battleground. The morning after the party, my gut churned worse than during a stormy crossing on the Atlantic. I woke up alone, the bed on Laura's side untouched since she must have slept in the guest room. The silence of the house echoed like the quiet before a firefight. I should have confronted her about the weird vibes from the party, about everything, but instead, I made coffee, thick and black as the oil in a Jeep's engine. The sun wasn't even up yet, and I was pacing the kitchen, mug in hand, trying to piece together the fragments of my marriage. Laura had been distant lately, colder than a winter in the Balkans. Her phone buzzed on the table, a message from someone named Dr. Vance, probably some new colleague from the hospital. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. The text was a knife twist. "Can't wait for our trip next week. It's going to be unforgettable." Unforgettable. That word bounced around my skull like shrapnel. I threw the mug against the wall, ceramic shards and coffee splattered like a burst wound. Laura stormed in, her face flushed with anger, or maybe guilt. "What the hell, Jack?" she snapped, her voice sharp as a sniper's bullet. I saw the text from Dr. Vance. "What's this trip about, Laura?" I demanded, stepping closer, feeling the familiar adrenaline of confrontation. She scoffed, tossing her hair back. "It's a medical conference in Miami. Not that it's any of your business." Her tone was dismissive, the way she'd talk to a disobedient dog, not the man she married. Since when do medical conferences involve unforgettable trips? Sounds more like a damn honeymoon. I shot back, voice raised. aching with betrayal. Laura rolled her eyes, her favorite defense. Oh, grow up, Jack. It's not like you were ever around. You and your military trips, God knows what you did. That accusation stung, and I felt my fists clench. But I remembered the countless nights worrying over her alone at home, the silent dinners when I was on leave, the disconnect growing between us like a tumor. So that's it, huh? You're screwing around while I'm trying to adjust to a normal life. The question hung in the air, heavy as fog. I'm not answering this, she muttered, turning to leave. No, you don't get to walk away from this, Laura. Not this time. I grabbed her arm, gentle but firm. We're talking now. The tension was a live wire between us. Fine, she hissed, wrenching her arm free. You want the dirty truth? I am seeing someone. It started as coffee. Coffee, Jack. But he listens. He's there. Unlike you, always off in some desert or jungle. Her words were a barrage, each one hitting its mark. My service, the sacrifice I thought we both valued, twisted into the ammunition she used to justify her affair. Who is he? I asked, my voice quieter now, resigned. Does it matter? Laura spat back. You wouldn't know him. Dr. Vance from cardiology. Happy now? No, I wasn't happy. The foundation of our life together crumbled beneath the weight of her betrayal. I felt old, tired, and defeated. My instincts screamed to fight, to yell, to shake her into remorse, but I was too spent. Instead, I watched her collect her things and leave for work, the door closing with a soft click that echoed like a final gunshot in my heart. Left alone, my thoughts spiraled. The man who had faced down enemy fire, negotiated with warlords, and navigated the political minefields of foreign territories was now the fool in his own home. Laura's affair, possibly not her first, mocked the loyalty and fidelity I had upheld throughout my years in service. As the day burned into afternoon, I couldn't stay inside the house. Our house turned mausoleum of our marriage. I needed air, space, clarity. I grabbed my jacket and keys and headed out, driving nowhere, anywhere. The roads were empty, the landscape a blur. I ended up at a bar known for its discretion and dim lighting. No one cared about your story here. Everyone had secrets. Sitting at the end of the bar, nursing a whiskey that burned less than my thoughts, I mulled over my options. The military had taught me strategy, but what strategy applies to a broken heart? Revenge? Forgiveness? Escape? As I sat there, the weight of my wedding ring oppressive on my finger, I realized that no tactical retreat could save what was already lost. The battle for my marriage was over, but the war for my dignity was just beginning. And I knew, with a soldier's resolve, that I wouldn't go down without a fight. The whiskey didn't dull the edge of betrayal. Instead, it sharpened it, honed it into a fine point that pricked at my conscience with every heartbeat. I drove home that night under a sky inked with the kind of darkness you only find when you're looking to lose yourself. But home didn't feel like home anymore. It was just a shell, a facade as hollow as my resolve. In the silence of the early morning hours, my mind raced, replaying every moment of the previous days, each memory tinged with the stain of Laura's infidelity. The couch where we had watched countless movies, wrapped in each other's arms, now felt cold and unwelcoming. I sat there until the sun bled into the horizon, signaling another day to face alone. I couldn't shake the image of Dr. Vance, this mystery man who had infiltrated my life without even stepping foot inside my house. Who was he to take what was mine? What did he offer her that I couldn't? These questions gnawed at me, each one echoing louder than the last. I needed answers. I needed to see the man who was dismantling my life piece by piece. Determined, I dressed and set out for the hospital where Laura worked. The drive was automatic, the route imprinted in my mind from the countless times I'd picked her up or dropped her off, back when our lives were intertwined beyond question. I parked, my hands trembling slightly on the steering wheel as I watched the hospital staff go about their morning routines, oblivious to the storm raging inside me. I found Dr. Vance easily enough. He was exactly how I imagined, tall, confident, with a smile that looked like it could sell sand in the desert. He moved with an air of self-assuredness that made my blood boil. I approached him, my steps measured, my voice steady. Dr. Vance? I called out as he turned. Yes. His response was cautious, his eyes narrowing slightly as he took me in. I'm Jack Davidson. Laura's husband, I said, the title, husband, feeling more like an accusation than a fact. His expression changed then, a flicker of recognition, or perhaps guilt, crossing his features. I see, he said simply, his tone neutral. How can I help you, Mr. Davidson? Cut the crap, I spat, the anger I'd been nursing now bubbling to the surface. I know about you and Laura. What I don't understand is why. Why her? Why my wife? Dr. Vance sighed, a sound that seemed to carry more weariness than I expected. Look, I don't think this is the place, Dash. No, I interrupted, stepping closer, my voice low and dangerous. This is exactly the place. You made it the place when you decided to mess with my wife. He looked around, clearly uncomfortable with the confrontation. Mr. Davidson, I respect that you're upset, but your issues are with Laura, not me. Whatever's happening between us, it's not Dash. Not what? Not real? Not important? I challenged, my hands clenched at my sides. You're destroying my marriage. Your marriage was damaged before I ever came into the picture, he countered, his voice calm but firm. I'm not the cause of your problems. That statement hit me harder than any physical blow could. The implication that my marriage, my life, was already crumbling was too much to bear. I stared at him, the realization dawning on me that perhaps there was truth in his words. Was I just a bystander in my own life, watching it fall apart? I'm not here to fight you, Dr. Vance continued, his tone softer now. I'm here to do my job, which includes being there for Laura when she needs someone. If you have issues in your marriage, I suggest you address them with her. His words, meant to be conciliatory, only fueled my rage. You think you know her? You see her here, at work, but you don't know her like I do. You never will. I don't claim to, he replied. But I do know that she's unhappy, and has been for a long time. Maybe instead of blaming others, you should ask yourself why. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, seething with a mix of anger, confusion, and an unexpected stab of sorrow. The truth, as harsh as it was, couldn't be ignored. I needed to face Laura, to confront the reality of our failing marriage head-on. But first, I needed to gather my thoughts, to steel myself for the conversation that would undoubtedly change the course of our lives forever. As I walked back to my car, the weight of the impending confrontation settled on my shoulders like a yoke. The battle lines were drawn, not against Dr. Vance, but within the confines of my own home, my own heart. The confrontation with Dr. Vance left me with a smoldering fury and a haunting emptiness. As I drove away from the hospital, the city seemed grim, its skyline a jagged wound against the overcast sky. The need for confrontation with Laura was inevitable and pressing, but there was another hunger, a raw, gnawing ache that demanded immediate attention. I ended up at a bar downtown, a place with dim lighting and a reputation for discretion. The kind of spot where burdens are drowned and desires can be whispered without judgment. The air was thick with smoke and the scent of spilled liquor. I found a secluded corner and ordered a whiskey, neat, the burn of the alcohol less intense than the turmoil swirling inside me. She walked in around midnight, a vision amid the haze. Her name was Mia, a bartender here, known for her fiery red hair and a smile that promised trouble. She recognized me immediately, a regular from a time when regular meant escaping the mundanity of daily life, not nursing a broken heart. Jack, haven't seen you in a while, she said, her voice smooth like velvet, as glinting with a mischievous spark. She poured herself a drink and leaned in close, her scent a mix of jasmine and something wild. What brings you to my domain tonight? Escaping reality, I replied, the words more honest than I intended. Mia's smile widened, and she touched my hand lightly, a spark of connection in her touch. Reality can be overrated. Want to forget it with me for a few hours? The offer was tempting, dangerously so. Mia was the antithesis of Laura, uncomplicated, unabashedly sensual. Her presence was a balm to the sting of betrayal. And how do you propose we do that? I asked, my voice low, leaning into the space between us. Mia stood, her hand still on mine, and nodded towards the back of the bar, where a narrow staircase led to private rooms reserved for VIP guest rooms that promised anonymity and freedom from prying eyes. Let me show you, she said, her invitation clear in her husky tone. I followed, led by the allure of her confidence and the escape she offered. The room was dimly lit, the walls adorned with velvet, the air tinged with the scent of incense. She closed the door behind us, and the world outside faded away, leaving only the palpable electricity between us. Mia turned to me, her hands finding their way to my chest, fingers tracing the lines of my shirt. Tell me what you need, she whispered, her breath warm against my ear. I pulled her closer, my hands roaming over the curves of her body, the contact sparking a heat I hadn't felt in months. Distraction, I murmured, and she laughed, a sound that vibrated through the charged air. Then let's distract each other, Mia said before her lips met mine, hungry and insistent. The kiss was a clash of need and desperation, a melding of loneliness and desire. We moved together, a dance of give and take, pushing and pulling in a rhythm driven by raw emotion. The night unfolded in a haze of passion and abandon. Mia's touch erased the complexities of betrayal, her presence a potent antidote to the poison of infidelity. For hours, reality was suspended, replaced by the immediacy of sensation and the simplicity of physical connection. But as dawn crept through the slats of the blinds, the escape Mia provided proved to be temporary. The world returned, sharp and intrusive, and with it, the weight of my crumbling marriage. I left the bar with Mia's lipstick on my collar and her perfume clinging to my skin, a reminder of the night's escape but also of its impermanence. Driving home, the first light of morning painted the sky in hues of gold and gray, a canvas of contradictions. The house that once felt like a sanctuary now seemed more like a battleground. I knew I had to face Laura, to confront the festering wound between us. But first, I needed to shower, to wash away the traces of the night, both the physical and the metaphysical. The confrontation with Laura loomed large as I parked the car and walked up to the front door. The key turned in the lock with a familiar click, but as I stepped inside, I knew that everything that was familiar about us was now foreign, tainted by secrets and lies. The house was quiet as I entered, the kind of oppressive silence that weighs on you, thick with unsaid words and unresolved anger. I shed the remnants of last night's escapade in the shower, the water scalding, as if I could burn away the guilt and the sin of Mia's perfume. But some stains, the ones etched deep in the soul, don't wash off so easily. As I wrapped a towel around my waist, I caught my reflection in the mirror, eyes haunted, a stranger staring back at me. What had I become? The question gnawed at me as I dressed, each piece of clothing feeling like armor donned for an impending battle. Laura was in the kitchen when I finally emerged, her back to me, sipping coffee as she looked out over the garden. The normalcy of the scene was a stark contrast to the turmoil inside me. I paused at the doorway, watching her for a moment. The familiar curve of her neck, the way her hair cascaded down her shoulders, details that once drew me to her now just reminders of the distance between us. "Morning," I said, my voice breaking the silence like a crack of thunder. She didn't turn, just raised her mug slightly in acknowledgement. "Jack." Her tone was cold, detached. "Sleep well?" Her question was a barbed wire, and I felt a flare of anger. "Not particularly." "You?" "I slept wonderfully. Thanks for asking," she replied, finally turning to face me. The chill in her eyes was more cutting than the edge in her voice. We stood there, measuring each other, the air thick with everything that had gone unsaid between us. The distance might have been just a few feet, but it felt like miles. I took a deep breath, bracing myself. "We need to talk, Laura." She laughed, a short, bitter sound. "About what, Jack? About how you've been spending your nights? Or is there something else you've lied about?" I clenched my fists, fighting to keep my voice even. "I think we're beyond pretending everything's fine." "Fine," she scoffed, setting her coffee down with a clatter. "We haven't been fine for a long time, Jack. Maybe you haven't noticed, but I stopped needing you a long time ago." Her words stung, each one landing like a punch. "So, what? You're just done with us?" Laura leaned against the counter, her posture relaxed but her eyes hard. "I think we were done a long time ago. You were just too wrapped up in yourself to notice." I stepped closer, frustration boiling over. "And your solution was to have an affair? To throw away everything we've built together?" She straightened, meeting my gaze head on. "I didn't throw anything away. You checked out of this marriage long before I did anything. At least Vance makes me feel wanted, alive." The mention of his name was like a spark to tinder, igniting my anger into fury. "So that's it? You're just going to throw us away for some fling?" Laura's expression hardened. "Vance isn't just a fling, Jack. He's what I need right now. Something you haven't been for a long time." The air between us crackled with the intensity of our emotions, anger, betrayal, hurt. It was a toxic mix that threatened to explode. "So where does that leave us, Laura?" She sighed, the sound heavy with weariness. "I think you know. I want a divorce, Jack. I want out." The words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me. A divorce. The end of everything we had been, everything I had fought for. The finality of it was overwhelming. A closing chapter on a story I thought would never end. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not the woman I married but a stranger. A stranger who had shared my bed, my life, but now shared only my resentment. "Okay," I managed to say, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. "If that's what you want." "It is," she said simply, her voice void of the warmth it once held. As I walked away, the sound of her sipping her coffee echoed in the empty house, a mundane act that marked the end of our life together. The battle was over, and in its wake, only the ruins of our shared past remained. The aftermath of Laura's declaration felt like the aftermath of a battlefield, silent, desolate, with the smoke of lost dreams still hanging in the air. The word divorce echoed in my mind like gunfire. I was a soldier once, trained to face enemy fire without flinching, but nothing had prepared me for this personal war where the heart was the battlefield and every memory a potential landmine. I drove without direction, the streets of our town blurring past. The bars were tempting places to drown sorrows and forget. But I ended up driving to the gym instead, a place where physical pain could distract from emotional wounds. The gym was nearly empty, the thud of my fists against the punching bag filling the vast space. Each strike a release of pent-up anger and betrayal. Working out the demons, huh? The voice came from behind me, slightly amused yet filled with a raspy warmth that I recognized instantly. I turned to find Jenna, her gym clothes clinging to her like a second skin, highlighting every curve and muscle with precision. The sight of her brought a different kind of ache, one that had nothing to do with heartbreak. Something like that. I replied, my voice rough from exertion. What brings you here? She shrugged, a sparkle in her eyes. Same as you, I guess. Escaping reality for a bit. She approached, her movements confident and graceful, a stark contrast to the chaos in my life. Want some company? I nodded, grateful for the distraction. We moved through the workout routines together, the rhythm of physical exertion a welcome respite from the turmoil in my mind. Jenna's presence was soothing, her casual touch as we spotted each other lifting weights sending jolts of electricity through my weary body. After the workout, she suggested grabbing a late-night bite, and I agreed without hesitation. The diner was quiet, the neon lights casting a surreal glow over everything. We slid into a booth, the vinyl squeaking under us. So, how are you holding up, really? Jenna asked, her gaze intense, searching. I sighed, running a hand through damp hair. It's like navigating a minefield blindfolded. Every step could be explosive. She reached across the table, her hand covering mine. You're not alone, you know. I'm here. The simplicity of her offer, the genuine concern in her eyes, it was more comforting than any platonic gesture had a right to be. We talked, the conversation meandering from trivial to personal, each word weaving a tapestry of newfound intimacy. As the night deepened, so did our connection, the diner fading away until it was just Jenna and me, alone in a bubble of shared solitude. When we finally left, the chill of the early morning air felt sharp against my heated skin. Come over, Jenna said as we reached her car, her voice a mix of command and invitation. I hesitated, a war of emotions raging inside me. But the pull of her magnetic gaze, the promise of forgetfulness in her smile, was too much to resist. I followed her home, the streets empty, our cars the only sounds in the quiet night. Her apartment was a stark contrast to the life I had known with Laura, modern, minimalist, with an air of independence that was as refreshing as it was intimidating. She led me inside, her hand clasped in mine, a lifeline in the stormy seas of my life. The door closed behind us, and suddenly, it was as if the world outside ceased to exist. There was only Jenna, with her intoxicating presence, drawing me in like a moth to a flame. She kissed me, a collision of lips and longing, and I responded with a hunger born of pain and need. Clothes became a memory, discarded as we explored each other with a desperation that was as much about healing as it was about passion. Her touch ignited fires I thought long extinguished, her body a map I was desperate to learn by heart. We moved together in the darkness, a dance of shadows and sighs, each movement writing a new chapter that had nothing to do with heartache. For those hours, Laura, the divorce, the betrayal, all of it vanished, replaced by the immediacy of Jenna's embrace, the undeniable reality of her warmth. When dawn crept through the blinds, painting her skin in hues of gold and amber, I lay beside her, feeling more at peace than I had in months. But the peace was fleeting. As the light grew, so did the awareness of what the morning would bring, a return to the chaos of my broken life. Jenna stirred beside me, her eyes opening, sleepy yet aware. Morning, she murmured, her voice husky with sleep and remnants of last night's passion. Morning, I replied, the word feeling strangely heavy. She smiled, a wistful, knowing expression that spoke volumes. Whatever happens, Jack, don't forget this, don't forget that you can feel, that you can be happy. I nodded, the promise like a pact between us. But as I left her apartment, stepping back into the reality of my crumbling marriage, I couldn't help but wonder if the happiness was just another fleeting shadow, a momentary escape from the battles yet to come. The last weeks had been a relentless storm, with each day dragging me deeper into a quagmire of despair and defiance. The looming divorce with Laura had turned bitter, every interaction laced with venom and accusation. Our once shared dreams lay shattered, replaced by the harsh reality of legal battles and heartache. Yet, amidst this chaos, Jenna became my solace, her presence a beacon in the fog of my unraveling life. But even this comfort couldn't shield me from what awaited one fateful evening. I returned home late from Jenna's place, the silence of our soon-to-be-sold house greeting me like an old friend turned foe. The darkness was oppressive, the shadows seeming to whisper secrets as I flicked on the lights. That's when I saw an envelope on the kitchen table, addressed to me in Laura's sharp scrawl. Tearing it open, I found divorce papers, their finality stark against the sterile white. But it was the note that cut deeper, Laura's words a knife twisting in my already wounded heart. Jack. This is the end. I've taken everything that was left of us. Don't try to find me. You won't like what you discover. Laura. Her words hung in the air, a cold mist settling over everything we had built. The finality of her message left no room for doubt. She was gone, and she took her secrets with her. But the line about not liking what I discover gnawed at me, a sinister echo in the otherwise empty room. Compelled by a mix of rage and despair, I drove to Dr. Vance's home. The address burned into my memory from the countless times Laura had mentioned him during our fights. The night was thick with fog, cloaking the world in a ghostly veil as I parked down the street from his sprawling, shadowy house. Approaching the door, my heart pounded with a mix of dread and determination. I rang the bell, each time a tolling bell for the life I once knew. Vance answered, his expression one of surprise that morphed into concern when he saw my face. Jack, what are you doing here? He asked, his voice cautious. Where is she, Vance? Where's Laura? I demanded, my voice a low growl. He hesitated, a frown creasing his brow. Laura isn't here. She hasn't been here for days. Liar. I stepped forward, my fist clenched. Jack, you need to leave, Vance warned, his stance firm. Laura made her choice. She's gone dash. But I was past listening. Pushing past him, I stormed into the house, each room a mocking testament to the life Laura had chosen with him. But she wasn't there, and with each empty room, my panic grew. Vance followed, his attempts to calm me ineffectual against my brewing storm. She left, Jack. She was scared of you, of what she was doing. She left the country. Scared? Of me. The irony was bitter, a cruel joke at my expense. I spun to face him, the betrayal and hurt boiling over. After everything, she runs? Yes, Vance admitted, his voice resigned. She thought it was best for both of you. The house suddenly felt stifling, a prison of broken promises. I left without another word, the night air doing nothing to cool my seething rage. Driving aimlessly, I ended up at a cliff overlooking the ocean, a spot Laura and I once loved. The waves crashed below, a tumultuous symphony that mirrored the chaos within me. As the sun began to rise, painting the sky in bruises of purple and orange, I made a decision. Laura had taken everything, my love, my trust, my future. But she wouldn't take my resolve. I would start anew, build a life from the ashes of the old, a life free of lies and betrayal. Months passed. I finalized the divorce, sold the house, and moved to a new city. The pain didn't disappear, but it dulled, softened by distance and time. Jenna stayed by my side, a steadfast presence as I pieced myself back together. One day, while walking through a new part of town, I passed a cafe. There, laughing carefreely at a table, was Laura. Our eyes met, 1,000 words passing between us in a silent moment. She looked away first, a clear dismissal. I walked on, the encounter a ghostly whisper of what once was. She had her secrets, her new life whatever that entailed. And I had mine, built not on the ruins she left behind, but on new foundations, strong and true. The journey was far from easy, the battles hard fought, but as I moved forward, I knew this. I was no longer defined by the betrayal I suffered, but by the strength I found in its aftermath. And that was worth everything.